So in this video, we're going to be talking about how BA, which is British Airways, has mistreated its staff. And so we'll go. Firstly, we'll go to the comments of the Select Committee report, which this article is based on. So the chair of the Transport Committee, Hugh Merriman, who is a Conservative. So this man's criticism is going to be, a guy, a party that's pro-business. So let's have a look at this. So the impact of the coronavirus will sadly mean that the loss of many jobs in the aviation sector is justified, which is fair enough because it's true. Working in a specific industry that's going to be hit very hard by the coronavirus, it makes sense that there will be layoffs and furloughs. But the behaviour of British Airways and its parent company, IAG, is not. It falls well below the standards expected from any employer, especially in light of the scale of taxpayer subsidy at this time of national crisis. It is unacceptable that a company would seek to drive this level of change under the cover of a pandemic. And so I'm just wondering, so it doesn't look like BA did ask for a taxpayer bailout, but essentially the government got ahead by the looks of things and said, you ain't getting one. And so, that sums that up. So going back to the article, so we've covered this bit. So BA said it was doing all it can to keep maximum jobs. What they did is incredibly scummy. So we've mentioned that bit. The aviation industry has been one of the hardest hit, forced because of the lockdown, because of the pandemic. So airlines including EasyJet, Ryanair, and Virgin Atlantic, and suppliers Rolls-Royce and Airbus have announced thousands of job cuts. BA has planned major restructuring, which could mean 12,000 redundancies and changes to terms and conditions. So we'll go into what BA have actually done here. So what BA have, so I misspoke in this video, and instead of saying what BA have done, which is wrong, it's what BA threatened to do. BA threatened to fire workers and try to rehire them on lower wages. No, they haven't actually done that, but they are threatening to do that. And so that's an important clarification to make for this video. So each time I say BA have done this, what I should have said is BA have threatened to do this. Okay, done is they fired staff and then rehired them on lower pay. So the MPs acknowledge that job losses will be inevitable, but urge UK-based employers not to proceed hastily by making a large number of people redundant while the government's furlough scheme was in place. So to fire staff whilst they could go on furlough is genuinely one of the worst things I've ever heard of a company doing, because this is absolutely senseless, and you're putting people on universal credit where they'll have to wait 5 weeks for any money, especially when you could put them on furlough and you can take them back in. But what BA is doing is something very different. What BA are doing here is firing people and rehiring them on lower contracts. So overall, BA would pay them less. And then BA could stick them back on furlough if they so wanted to. And so once the furlough ends, then BA could pay them less, even though they don't have to. And so unions told the committee that BA had threatened a fire and rehire approach by giving redundancy notice to most of its 42,000 workers with the intention of offering jobs to a proportion of them under diminished terms and conditions. Absolute scumbag behaviour. So the British Transport Committee had found that BA had received nearly £35 million from the government as of February 14th, and now we're in June. This is a month on. By furloughing 22,000 staff. The MPs also noted by the end of 2019, the airline recorded profits after tax of 1.1 billion and had 2.6 billion of cash reserve. So they didn't even need to put staff on furlough, and they didn't need to do this hiring, refiring nonsense and putting people on lower wages. The committee's report said the behaviour of British Airways and its parent company towards its employees is a national disgrace. It falls well below the standards we would expect from any employer, specifically in the light of taxpayer subsidies at this moment of a national crisis. There have been calls from MPs and unions for BA to be stripped of some of its lucrative takeoff and landing slots at Heathrow Airport as punishment for this, which I 100% agree with. But we should also look at the impact that would have on workers as well. Tory MP Hugh Merriman, who chairs the committee, said, "We will continue to bring pressure where we can, including the airport slot allocation process. This wanton destruction of a loyal workforce cannot appear to go without sanction by government, parliamentarians or paying passengers who may choose differently in future. We view it as a national disgrace." And so deep crisis. Bolper said the committee was absolutely right about BA. Brian Strutton, the union's general secretary, said any company using the cover of COVID to slash jobs and terms and conditions like this need to be called out. I have described the consultation between Bolper and BA as hanging by a thread due to BA's decision to hire and the fire and rehire threat. That remains the case. So we can see BA absolute scumbags here in dealing with their workers and this union as well. So the airline statement: we found ourselves in the deepest crisis ever faced by the airline industry, a crisis not of our own making, but one we must address. We must do everything in our power to ensure British Airways can survive and sustain the maximum number of jobs, and blah blah blah. So we'll go to some analysis from Theo Leggett, and I'll give more of my thoughts. So BA is already embroiled in a bitter fight with unions and a row with the government. Now MPs have weighed in against the company as well. It's a remarkable situation for BA. It was once seen as a flag carrier for British values and national champion with the closest links to the government and a place where staff were delighted to work. So what's gone wrong? COVID-19 crisis has scathed through the airline industry, leaving previously strong companies teetering. But these guys have got money in the bank. Carriers around the world are shedding jobs as they prepare for a bleak few years. BA is far from unique in wanting to make deep cuts, but there's more to that. More than that, BA has spent the past decade trying to streamline its business in order to compete with low-cost upstarts like Ryanair and EasyJet. They're terrible airlines. Those two are. That has sometimes caused conflict with employees and seemingly created a legacy of mistrust and resentment, in particular among cabin crew. So BA are basically involved in the race to the bottom in terms of staffing, salaries, and what's called flight quality. I guess I'll describe it as the stuff you get on the plane. Now during a crisis, those feelings are bubbling up at times. The company looks as though it's under siege. The MP's report also urged government to abandon its 14-day quarantine rule, which is 100% the wrong thing to do. It called for more targeted and nuanced border control policy, allowing people travelling from other countries where the infection rate of COVID is relatively low to enter the UK on a less restricted basis. Which that's not the worst thing in the world. On Friday, BA EasyJet launched legal action against the flawed quarantine policy. The airlines are asking for judicial review to be heard as soon as possible, claiming the measures introduced this week will have a devastating impact on the British tourism and wider economy. And if people from abroad that bring more COVID-19 here, that's going to impact the economy. So the argument they're putting down is one of the worst arguments I've heard. They have said that there is no evidence of when the proposed air bridges between the UK and other countries will be implemented. Are you surprised that this government hasn't got a date on anything? Are you really surprised? Instead, they want the government to re-adopt the policy introduced on the 10th, which requires passengers from countries deemed at high risk of the coronavirus infection to self-isolate on arrival to the UK. But who's enforcing this? But Home Secretary Priti Patel insisted that the policy can help stop a devastating second wave of the disease, which, she's actually right on, surprisingly. And so here you can see BA absolute scumbags here in the way they've treated the staff. And, BA, he didn't get to be one of the top dogs without the staff that you have. So instead of rewarding your staff and being patient and looking after your staff when they need you most, instead you've decided to screw them over. And if we look here for the possible reasoning behind this, is if we look at their stock price over the last 6 months, you can see, obviously this is pre-COVID, you had a real high here of 623 pence per share. 664, that was the highest in January. And then obviously with the coronavirus, it dropped and it's come back to about 275. So let's have a look for the last few days. It peaked at 282, and it's going to be a few months of pain for BA. But you do not need to fire staff when the furlough option is there. And even when the furlough option goes to you having to pay 20%, you could easily afford that, given that you made a post-tax profit of £1.1 billion and you have a cash reserve of £2.6 billion. Okay, you're not one of these small companies who doesn't have big cash reserves. Okay, you're not one of these companies barely breaking even. You can easily afford to pay your staff, but you choose not to because you're a scummy company. And look, I hope the unions win out. And look, I don't know what the resolution is to this, but I hope the staff are well looked after, and I hope BA actually remember who makes the airline money, because it's not it's not just your shareholders, bruv. It's your staff and everyone involved with the whole operation. Okay, these people here, they're the ones making money, the ones that improve the service. They're the ones that help people make the choice to fly BA because they offer a good premium service, not some B1 air flight where you can't move your legs. Okay, when you go BA, you expect a premium service, not staff who are treated like crap. So your company can save money when it doesn't have to, because you have £2.6 billion in reserve and £1.1 billion after tax profit. So yeah, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.